Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy Zamora. I am a student of UAT, and today I'll be talking about my research paper that I did for class. One of the biggest things that I wanted to reference was what's going on in India. My research paper is called India Today. It has been one of the topics that we've read and talked about in class, kind of somewhat of a before and after coronavirus. I think India has some very interesting elements that could potentially give us a reference of how multiple economies are connected. Also, how things in India internally, as far as religion, is being impacted by the coronavirus and obviously the global epidemic. But obviously, we want to talk about how, obviously this impacts globally, how this impacts internally, locally, and also what kind of issues are we seeing, right? So I prepared this research paper that kind of references somewhat of the starting point. So, the World Bank reported back in September 21st in 2018 that India is actually, or was actually trending, right behind China. Started in 27, so 2007, they reported $1.2 trillion, and just finishing 2018, they were obviously at 2.6 trillion. So obviously a big increment of a trending. They are obviously measuring all goods and services. That is the World Bank reports for the GDP. So obviously we see that a lot of the economy is obviously at S plus, right, at trending up. Also in my research paper, you'll be able to see that a lot of the economy in India, to no surprise, is from outsourcing jobs that United States, United Kingdom are obviously using for maybe perhaps cheaper labor or just for the nature of outsourcing. So one of the biggest things that I noticed in this particular articles was the fact that, it's a trending economy up, but also a lot of those jobs that are allowing the economy being fueled are also, call centers that are in some shape or form connected with other economies. So, the way I think about that is, a lot of our services here relying on this call centers or this outsourcing service that India provides, and if they if they can't do the job, then that impacts us. And that's kind of what I wanted to go into as I move forward with my research paper, which obviously it talks about how this epidemic, right, this coronavirus has come and impacted directly. So, in one of one of the articles that I actually referenced in my research paper, they talk about an individual called Amar Secured, which is a call center worker. It talked about how it takes him 2 hours to make it to work, via bus, and then his salary is about like $3,000 a year. But he, in fact, works for a call center that provides customer service and IT support to the United States and UK. So, we start seeing the connection. We start seeing that, because of the coronavirus and the regulations that are recently posted in India, where, it's a mandated lockdown, some of those workers don't have the resources to make it to work. Therefore, they're not can't help us. And I think at a macro level, we're being impacted because maybe, okay, there's more of a delay in calls. And I think, maybe perhaps we've experienced that recently. I don't know if you maybe had the opportunity to call Comcast or a bank, credit card company where, the first 10 seconds or 5 seconds is the company apologizing because there's longer than expected calls. And as I'm reading this articles and as I'm connecting these dots, it makes sense, right? So, one of the biggest things that I saw in the research that I did was that it's about 60%, 60% of the, the economy that is being driven by this IT outsourcing call centers or just outsource itself. So if a lot of people are in that position like Amar, that are being impacted, that's gonna in some shape or form have a ripple effect on us and the rest of the world and other economies, because now they can't operate like they would, right? I think that it's important to note that NPR article showed that even if they wanted to start working remotely, some of the companies, I mean, we put in perspective, $3,000 salary annually. I mean, the gentleman talked about how difficult it was to even consider, buying a laptop or buying a computer to go to work. He also talks about how he supports his family and mother, all out of this small chunk of salary, right? So I think as they start looking into the bigger problem, they are noticing that in some shape or form they have to start rolling out this remote worker environment where and it shares in an article where you are seeing companies now renting computers and paying for workers internet at home just so they can connect and work remotely. So I think that it starts there, and then also we'll somewhat go back to the new norm. But it is interesting to see how economies around the world, more importantly, the India, that in some shape or form was trending up. Had a very good last couple of years based on the services they provide, has been impacted by the fact that we can't go to work, to the headquarters, or just in some shape or form we're going into a transition where we have to reinvent the way we do business, and I think India is going through that as well. So a little more furthermore, we start seeing that is not the only crisis or problem they're suffering because of what the new norm is, and it's impacting the economy. So as I was reading in some of the articles and referencing the book as well, we noticed that there are attacks, more of an internal attack. And I apologize if I lose it. I just want to make sure I got their name right. But it's actually called alhazara.com. It seems to be a news. It was a news website, and Elizabeth Puranama talks about what's happening internally in India. So they actually have a pretty big, I would say, population between Muslims and Hindus, and what we're starting to notice is the fact that some of these Muslims that are outside workers, or maybe perhaps just local individuals that sell groceries on the streets and whatnot, hosted a religious gathering recently. The report actually is 10 hours ago, which not the gathering itself, but what's the aftermath is happening. And pretty much what's going on is Muslims hosted a religious gathering in the capital, and then the Hindus started blaming the spread of or breaking the law, and the spread of coronavirus in the area. So it didn't stop there. It actually got a little bit worse based on the documentary slash news that we are able to reference in this paper. But pretty much what it means is now they're being targeted, and they're being targeted more on the social media, instigated, meaning like creating. They actually have corona terrorism, bioterrorism, just really targeting the Muslims. I think it's an interesting concept to see, because obviously, you have people that are trying to make a living, and the way they're going to make a living is going out there and selling what they know what to do. But at the same time, on a global epidemic, you have to take the precautions, right? So I saw this more also referencing the economy hit, because you have people that are no longer making the economy move forward, if you may, by selling their products, and people are not buying. But at the same time, you introduce religion into a small place, or small capsule of multicultural individuals, and you got the fanatism, and it starts getting interesting. So we see that from the Hindus targeting the Muslims, and to the point that you start seeing in the news, politicians actually. There's a politician, Suresh Tirawi, who's actually publicly saying, "Do not buy from the Muslims." So I think that it is important to be very, very careful with the spreading of the virus. I think we've seen our fair share, and I think taking this means of communication to prevent a behavior, it's good. It's more when you start seeing more of an aggressive reaction, which is kind of what we're starting to see now by the Hindus attacking the Muslims. We have a Mohammed Naim, which is a local Muslim who was actually attacked by about 5 individuals from the Hindu background with sticks, right? So that's something that I think we're definitely crossing the line. There's no if or but I think that when you have so many variables out there, in a global pandemic, that it's taken a hit, constantly hitting the economy in so many levels. I think chaos is definitely taking the best of us in some shape or form in this type of cases. So this was the research that I was able to kind of gather. It seems like, to no surprise, I think the economy is being referenced here. Obviously, I think one of the biggest aha moments that I had was how big of economy, how big the economy in India relies on workers that are technically speaking the outsource of many countries like the UK and the US, and how everything is connected. How it really ripples effect across the board. From the foundations that are being attacked, right? So if I'm a company here in the U.S. and my foundation is based out of an outsource calling, to keep my budget down and allow my operations, team to kind of move forward, or maybe be able to invest in other budgets, and that's being attacked, obviously it we feel it. And obviously, when you start zooming in a little more into the real problem, and you see people like Zakir Amar, being impacted by not being able to make kids to work, it's definitely something to take note on and learn from, to be more prepared moving forward. So, with that being said, like I said, Jamie Zamora with UAT, University of Advanced Technology. And this is my final. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.